Imagine waking up for the 100th time with the same person on your mind. Someone who hurt you, someone who may not even be in your life anymore. That familiar ache in your chest, the way your thoughts circle back to them no matter how hard you try to focus on something else. You're not just missing them. You're caught in a mental loop that feels impossible to escape. We've all been there, that moment when you promise yourself, today I won't think about them, only to find yourself replaying conversations, imagining alternate endings, or scrolling through old messages by lunchtime. What most people don't realize is that this isn't just a lack of willpower. It's actually your brain chemistry working against you in fascinating ways. Let's talk about what's really happening when heartbreak feels like an addiction. Remember that scene in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where Jim Carrey's character desperately tries to hold on to memories of Kate Winslet even as they're being erased? He whispers desperately, clutching at memories slipping away like sand. That's not just beautiful cinematography, it's neuroscience. When someone becomes significant to us, they literally reshape our neural pathways. Your brain forms thousands of connections associated with this person. Their laugh, their smell, places you went together, songs you shared. When they're suddenly gone, these pathways don't just disappear. What's happening is remarkably similar to addiction. Studies show that romantic rejection activates the same brain regions as cocaine withdrawal. That's right, you're essentially going through withdrawal from a person. I once had a friend who described checking her ex's social media as knowing it was bad for me, but doing it anyway. She said this with such frustration in her voice. Sound familiar? That's because the dopamine reward system that keeps substances addictive is the same one keeping you hooked on thoughts of someone who hurt you. Now let's explore why this pain feels so physically real. Have you ever noticed how heartbreak actually hurts physically? There's a reason we call it heartbreak and not mind annoyance. In a groundbreaking study at UCLA, researchers discovered with surprise and fascination that social rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. That's why words like crushed or wounded feel so appropriate. Your brain processes emotional pain using many of the same circuits as physical injuries. Think about that scene in Marriage Story, where Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson finally say all the things they've been holding back. They collapse to the floor, voices breaking, tears flowing. The way they crumble under the weight of those words isn't just acting, it's a perfect illustration of how emotional pain manifests physically. Here's where it gets really interesting. The person you can't stop thinking about, they've likely triggered what therapists call an emotional wound map, connections to vulnerabilities that formed long before you met them. Maybe your ex's dismissiveness echoed how a parent never had time for your accomplishments. Perhaps their hot and cold behavior mirrored the inconsistent affection you received growing up. Or their betrayal reactivated that core childhood fear that you're somehow unworthy of faithful love. We see this beautifully portrayed in films like Silver Linings Playbook, where Bradley Cooper's character paces anxiously, book in hand, desperately trying to make sense of his past. He can't move forward until he recognizes how his current attachments connect to deeper patterns. This isn't about blaming your childhood for everything. It's about understanding that when you can't stop thinking about someone, it's often because they've unknowingly tapped into a deeper narrative that's been playing throughout your life. Now, for the hopeful part, finding freedom from these thought loops. Here's the good news. Understanding these mechanisms doesn't just explain your pain, it gives you the key to freedom. When you recognize that your brain is essentially programmed to keep this person in your thoughts, you can stop beating yourself up for not being over it already. This isn't weakness, it's neuroscience. I remember watching La La Land and how Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling's characters share that bittersweet moment of recognition years later. Their eyes meet across the room, memories flood back, a smile forms. That's not just beautiful storytelling, it shows the realistic transition from painful rumination to gentle remembrance. The goal isn't to never think of this person again. It's to transform those thoughts from hijackers of your peace to occasional visitors that no longer derail your day. One technique many find helpful is what therapists call the externalization journal, a space where intrusive thoughts about past hurts can live outside of you, like placing painful memories on a shelf where you can see them without having to carry them everywhere. Here's how you might practice this. Find a dedicated notebook that becomes the home for thoughts of this person. When thoughts of them arise, don't fight them. Redirect them to the journal. Write everything you're feeling, no filters, for about 10 minutes. When you finish, close the book and say aloud, "That's where these thoughts belong." This practice works because it gives those persistent thoughts somewhere to go besides circling in your mind. You're literally creating new neural pathways by changing how you respond to these thoughts. Remember in Inside Out, when Joy finally understands that sadness has an important role to play? She realizes with gentle compassion that pushing emotions away only makes them stronger. That's what you're doing, acknowledging these thoughts rather than suppressing them, but giving them appropriate boundaries. We don't just suddenly stop thinking about someone who's wounded us deeply. Like the character development in any great film, healing happens in scenes, not all at once. But here's what I can promise you. With each time you redirect those thoughts, with each moment you compassionately understand why your brain is stuck, you're creating a new story. One where this person becomes a chapter, not the whole book. What thoughts about someone who hurt you keep circling in your mind? Have you noticed connections between these feelings and earlier experiences in your life? Share your experience in the comments. Sometimes naming these patterns is the first step to freedom. If you found value in understanding these psychological patterns, consider subscribing to join our community. We're all learning to navigate these complex emotions together, and your voice matters in this conversation. Thank you for journeying with me today. Remember, the most beautiful landscapes are often hidden beneath the surface. Keep exploring.